Welcome to Soul Sister Stories, where we dive into profound journeys of spiritual awakening with inspiring women. I'm Rika Markel, your host on this journey. My passion is to empower you to tune into your soul's whispers by presenting you the stories of soul sisters who have dared to dream and live extraordinary lives while helping others doing the same. Hi everyone, I am here for another Soul Sister story, and I have with me Sabriyé Dubrie, who happened to be from the Netherlands, which is of course very interesting to me because before we were talking in Dutch, but we're not going to do that to you. So we'll just speak English from now on. So Sabriye, thank you so much for being on my show. I really appreciate it. We are touching here on all the souls and all the stories and all the spiritual awakenings and how that can change people's life. So I'm not going to introduce you. I would love to do that yourself. So then you can tell my audience whatever it is that you want to tell them. Who are you?
Awesome. Thank you for having me. My name is Sabriyé Dubrie. I am a spiritual author and multidimensional healer and founder of Soul Embodiment Therapy and the School of Soul Embodiment. And I help people to embody their soul blueprint.
Very
A
interesting.
little
Yeah,
bit of
what does
what
it
I
mean
do.
to call blueprint? Like, give us a little bit more, give us a little
Okay,
bit of juice here.
we're going to dive right in. Okay, so we all have a soul blueprint. That's like the perfect embodiment of who we are on a soul level. But the reason why we don't embody that soul blueprint is that, we have this layer of trauma that is, as it were, blocking that soul blueprint from fully, it's kind of like a hologram being shot out from the soul realm into the earth. And then it just disperses because of the trauma. And this is the thing, because a lot of people either think they don't have trauma or, they're going crazy over the trauma. But the thing is that as souls, we used trauma. This is an eye opener for everyone that I've told this. We use trauma in order to densify from light beings into physical beings. Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
exactly. So we needed trauma in order to densify our, vibrational field in order to be able to become physical and take human form. And so the whole idea of soul embodiment therapy is then just going back and going through all the different lifetimes and the soul path where we have all these misunderstandings around this trauma, seeing it from the soul's perspective. And then instead of holding on all of this unconscious baggage that we, have influencing our lives still today, we can release it and then truly embody the truth of who we are, because
Right.
basically that's the only thing that's interfering. But because we have so self-identified with this trauma, no longer is seen as simply something to densify our energy field. No, it's become ours, it's become mine, and so we hold on to it and we cherish it and we nurture it, like it's it's this it's almost like this sick addiction.
We want to own it. We want to own our trauma. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a blankie for the ego, that is for the personality. And so it's really about releasing that identification. And when we can do that, then it's quite easy to simply embody the truth of who we are. And so I kind of want to go directly into like our personal trauma within this lifetime, because we've all had some sort of experience that left its scars in this lifetime, whether that's in childhood or in adulthood. Everyone has something. And if it isn't like abuse, it can just be something like a car accident or some other kind of experience like a house burning down. you know Too often people think of trauma only as this kind of experience that was abusive towards them, and that is not the definition of trauma. Trauma can be anything that we experience as traumatic. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be abuse. And so what I found in my work is that when we have current life trauma, childhood trauma, it is always to help us release a deeper trauma on a soul path and past life level. And the same is true for ancestral trauma. Ancestral trauma is nothing but a soul group of Earth family members coming together to help each other heal the same soul themes that they individually have been struggling with over lifetimes and lifetimes. So that's, we never inherit any trauma or take on any trauma from ancestors that does not, correlate to our own soul journey, that does not help us release a deeper wound on that level. And so when we get past that kind of like that really personal aspect, the thing is that because these are all experiences that were kind of like logged as the self, as experiences belonging to the self, even on experiences that we didn't experience in this lifetime, they can still feel very much like our own. And this is because, and we're going to get a little bit technical here. So as as human beings, we have a mental, emotional, physical, vibrational body. We also have a causal body, which is also called the karmic body. And so this is the body when we die, when our earth life has finished and we're ready to move to the next phase, then all of these other bodies die except for the causal body. The causal body is the body that follows us from lifetime to lifetime. And so it's in that causal body that we carry the karmic templates. And often because people misinterpret ideas that they're taught basically wrong, because a lot of people have this idea about karma that it's like this divine justice retribution system, and it's not. It's very impersonal, it's very supportive, and it's simply that which you have left unresolved and that you still seek to resolve on a soul level. That is karma. Yeah. And so those karmic templates go with us from lifetime to lifetime. And within the causal body, we also have a higher ego. Yeah, so the lower ego is the personality. That's who we are here, you, me, talking to each other. Yeah, that's also there's such a misunderstanding, like the ego is something that we need to like eradicate or subdue or anything like that. And the ego is very much supportive of us and is what allows us to function here in the 3D, in the physical, as a separate being from the rest. That's the function of the ego. And so we have a higher ego and we have a lower ego, and all the experiences of the lower ego, of the incarnated ego, we can also say, because it's not a hierarchical like higher and lower. It's not like that. It's just simply one that's incarnated and one that's not incarnated. The incarnated ego has all of these experiences, and it uploads this as a word to this causal body. And the causal body is basically like the cloud. It's like Google Drive. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
Okay, so it uploads all of these experiences, and all these experiences are logged in the cloud in this causal body as experiences belonging to the self, because this higher ego that goes with us from lifetime to lifetime, it's like the part of us that incarnates with us every single lifetime until the causal body ceases to exist, and then this separation consciousness doesn't need to exist anymore. So in Sanskrit, the name of this higher ego is called ahamkara, and that means the I making. It's the part of us that makes us separate from source. And so the ahamkara logs all of these experiences as belonging to the self, and every time that we reincarnate, then those experiences that were logged as the self are then kind of like downloaded again by the incarnated ego as its own memories, even though that expression of the soul, because you and me are not the same expression of the soul as we were, for example, 3 lifetimes ago. Those were completely different people, different expressions of our soul. So for me also, the whole idea that this is who I was in my past life, I mean, I still use the terminology just because most people don't understand that it's actually not the case, you know, that we are not our past lives. But the memories, just as much, I mean,
Okay.
basically, it's the same as ancestral. The
Yeah,
memories of these past life experiences can be passed on to the current life self as if the current life self lived them.
got it.
And then the current life self is hindered by them to the very same degree.
Understood. It's an interesting view on it. I truly appreciate you explaining it so in detail. I do have a question though. Like
Sure.
you talk about it, you own it. This is your stuff. You can totally see that. How did that knowledge come to you? Like you talk about this in Soul Sister Stories. This is really the juicy part of it because
Yeah.
I saw in talking to many people over my lifetime that there's two kind of awakened souls. The ones that almost were born awakened. They always knew when they from the moment they can remember, they knew that there was something more, and they
Yeah.
just couldn't express it, but they knew it, and they were seekers from the day they were born. Or you have the people that had like an event, something happened, a near-death experience, or all of a sudden something, a vision, whatever it was, and from that moment on their life changed. So which category are you in?
Maybe even a mix of the two,
Okay.
I think. And I think that experience that I had was kind of like the catalyst to unlock all of these things in myself. Look, I grew up in the States, hence, you know, the not very Dutch accent to my English. I grew up in California and in a church there where we were already learning about reincarnation when I was 9 years old. And at that time, it didn't really, you know, do much for me. I mean, I was much more rebellious at that time. But, you know, the basis was laid. And then fast forward when I was already like in my early 40s, I met this guy online. I had a web design company and he had an online marketing company. And so I outsourced work to him. And that simply happened because I met his best friend online. And then his best friend was working for a company, couldn't finish what I wanted. And I was asking for a refund and he was like, let me just try to do what you want one more time. And that was because we had his best friend and I had headed off like amazingly. We found out that we both had read Yogananda, the autobiography of a yogi. And so I wasn't that much into like, I mean, no, I wasn't that much into like Indian philosophy or yoga or any of that kind of stuff. But I had read that book because when I grew up in the States, we even went to the Yogananda ashram. So I remembered Yogananda from my youth. And so I got into contact with the other guy, and he had read the book as well. So we were three people all having read that. It was, you know, like it was so. And then one evening it was just bam. And then the first time I heard his voice, it was like, oh my God, you're back. And it was this amazing, amazing deep love, despite the fact that we had quite some age difference going on. And in the end, the best friend got married, invited me to India. I remember before I went there, I had this web design company and I wasn't doing anything particularly spiritual. I mean, I had some spiritual ideas, but I wasn't like, you know, it was web design with a kind of spiritual twist. Came back from that experience in India, and I think like it was a month later, I was able to bring people into their past lives. So I've actually never studied for what I do. It simply got activated by going on that trip. Yeah.
And so how did you realize that? How did you realize that something changed about you?
Well, it's because I do a lot of healing, and then within the healing sessions, all of a sudden we were kind of like getting, well, you should start giving sessions yourself now. And I was like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah, I can still see that.
I
Gosh,
was
the
like,
power of
yeah.
play. Help me.
Everyone else is like superly gifted, spiritual, but me, I'm like a muggle, I don't have magic. And then it turned out that I had loads of magic. But yeah, at that time I had no idea. And so I sent, I had this like considerable list because I had already been in online business for a couple of years. And so I sent this like email to my list, and I said, well, you know what? Yeah, this is coming up. I'm being prompted to offer sessions. And I was like, well, at the very least, I can give a lot of great advice. Like, I mean, that like people will not be wasting their time with me because I'll be able to coach them. Yeah. And the life, experience that I have. I mean, I wasn't 24 anymore. I had something to give. I was like, okay, I can do this. And so I offered something like 10 spots. And I think something like 35 people signed up or something. And so I ended up giving way more sessions than the 10 that I had offered for free. And then one by one, all of them were like going into their past lives. And I was like, holy fuck, okay, well, that seems to be my superpower. Yeah, and then it went from there. So after over 1,000 sessions with 1,000 different clients, yeah, it's really grown into something else. And so I started within the twin flame industry because, obviously, that connection felt like a twin flame connection. That's actually the funny part. I don't know if you know Elizabeth Clare Prophet
No,
from
I
the church. Okay, well, she's from Church Universal and Triumphant. She's dead already. She's deceased already, I think in 2009 or something. So anyway, I grew up in Church Universal and Triumphant with Elizabeth Clare Prophet, and Elizabeth Clare Prophet was one of the first teachers on the concept of twin flames. That, at that time, like I was there in the 80s, but she was teaching it like in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It was completely novel, and everybody was like, oh my God. And so, that's kind of like the scene where I set it all up. And then at some point, I realized they're great people, but they're very wounded people. And I also realized that many of them would eat grass or drink poison if they thought that that would bring this other person back to them, that they could have this romantic outcome that they wanted. And I realized that I just didn't want to work with people anymore that only wanted to work with me in order to be in a relationship with someone else. Yeah, so, they literally, well, not all of them, but most of them could care less, if they truly healed something. But if they had to heal something in order to be with this person,
got
they would heal everything, like, so that was kind of like the vibe. And I was, at some point I was like, okay, you know what, this doesn't work for me anymore, because I had continued to heal in my own journey, and it just, where I was capable of taking people, these people aren't willing to go. They weren't interested because
got it.
they
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
they wanted different results. So then I said to myself, you know what? I only want to work with people that truly want to heal. I want to work with people like me who are invested in healing themselves for themselves. And so one of the first people that came to me as a client, which was still a twin flame client at that time, but that was kind of what changed it all, was a psychiatrist. So I started working with a psychiatrist as a client. And then she brought in one of her colleagues to work with me. And then I was getting psychologists as clients and psychotherapists as clients. And these were the people that were so ready to go deep. So that really allowed me to
Yeah.
find this deeper soul path, experiences that we're holding on to, like even the split from source, how that actually creates like the basis of our personality. We think that, like, contemporary psychology tells us that our childhood is what creates our personality. But what I found is that, those really, really deep own character traits that we really identify with, those are all soul path wounds. Yeah. And so, yeah, in working with these people, we got to much, much greater depths. And, and deeper transformation. And yeah, so that was almost like the cherry on the cake to be able to go even deeper into this work and really guide people to the truth of who they are, which is
So
also
how
when
does it
I
look like? Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't want to, I
yeah,
don't want to interrupt you, but
no, it's
like,
okay.
how does it look like? Like you say, you help people to get to the truth of who they really are. What does that mean to you? And how does that show up for that person?
So one of the things that I do with soul embodiment therapy is, I mean, we can work on like more superficial level and we can work on this deeper level. And when we work on this deeper level, we're really working on like parts of the personality. Yeah, the psychological patterns and the subconscious programming. So one of my clients who's a psychotherapist, she started with me. And the first thing that we worked on was to help her heal martyrdom. So that's where we started. We started with martyrdom, and then she came back. She wanted to do another round of sessions, and then we worked on victimhood. And so she was able to heal both martyrdom and victimhood within herself, which allowed her to completely shift her life. Like when we met, she was married and in a life that wasn't hers. And afterwards, she got an RV and she got a new relationship that was completely fulfilling, and she started, well, much like you, going around through the States and Canada and working from the road. And it really helped her to like release this inner drive that made her do her work, not and I find this a lot with therapists. So a lot of therapists are therapists because they're trying to rectify something they did wrong in a previous lifetime. And there's no better way to rectify, what you did wrong as to make amends by helping other people. Yeah, so with therapists, that's really common. Like savior complex is really common with or rescuer. The rescuer archetype is really common with therapists. But the problem is, of course, that if we have the victim triangle with the rescuer, the victim, and the bully, then the rescuer, even though he seems to be, or she, whatever, seems to be like superior to the other two, who are definitely, visibly in a conflict. The rescuer is simply another face of victimhood, and the rescuer is still on the victim triangle. So
Yeah,
helping therapists get off of that is like very massive for their work. Yeah, because it allows them a level of empowerment that they can then pass on to their clients because they have tasted it and experienced it and embodied it for themselves. And so that's also one of the things that I do is that when I work with people, so often people, business owners have their special niche, right? They have their thing that they sell. And often what I find is that when I do a session with someone like that, is that I help them embody the last piece of their teachings. Yeah. So for example, I worked with a Dutch client who was really about having it all, and there was this pattern of wanting to self-punish because of something from the past, and so she couldn't allow herself to have it all. She could accumulate, she could create, but then she couldn't allow herself to actually enjoy that, rest in that, feel secure in that. There was like a separation between her and the good that she created. So in a way, she couldn't even allow herself to have it all. And that's on such a subtle level, after the session, she was able to just really let that go and fully embody her teachings. I had another client that I worked with was an American client. She teaches like feminine surrender, really embodying the feminine and leaning back and allowing the man to lead. But the thing is that many women have, and we're going to get into something deeper again here, many women have a collapsed inner masculine, which creates the rigid inner feminine. And when we have a rigid inner feminine, we find it incredibly difficult to relax, to surrender, to open up, to receive, and to be vulnerable. Yeah,
That's a
because
whole list. Oh my God.
yeah. But women, if I say that list, women are always like, oh yeah, that's me. When we have a collapse in our masculine, it means that there is nothing, no one within the in the self, within the feminine masculine archetype to or template to protect the feminine. And so she's left to fend for her own. And the only way she can do that is by putting on a protective layer, closing herself off. And when she does that, she has to sacrifice her own femininity. And so then it's really about working on those experiences in both this lifetime as well as previous lifetimes or on a soul path level where this inner masculine collapsed. And, on a current life level, it's always abuse, like an abusive father leads to a collapse in a masculine.
We work in the session, we work on how does that look like? What is happening in a session?
So in that session, I will guide people through their own soul records and they experience it for themselves. So because for me, if someone else tells me what they see and how they experience it, that never works for me. I can't connect to that. And I find that a lot of people cannot connect to that. And so the most powerful thing is to allow people to experience it firsthand. And so that's what we do. I guide people into this experience. So it's almost like a regression, but it's
Okay.
not a regression. Really what makes what I do with clients so completely different, especially with the soul embodiment therapy method, is that we don't revisit one lifetime. We go through like a pattern of 9, 10, sometimes even 15, and I've had 20 lifetimes come up in a session. And that allows us to identify a core pattern that's been playing out over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. And the client, every time, sees the story, experiences the story, releases any stuck emotions around it within the session. And then we dig deeper and dig deeper until we find the original wound. And the original wound is never the same as the story that they have playing out on rinse and repeat throughout all of these lifetimes. And when we find the original wound and expose the faulty interpretation from the ego by showing the subconscious the truth from a soul's perspective, that automatically reprograms the subconscious mind and rewires the brain. It triggers the brain to rewire itself and the subconscious to reprogram itself. So instead
So
of trying to,
everybody goes back. I don't know, like I'm just trying to
yeah,
create
sure,
a
sure.
visual so that people can see how that really works. Like, because it's different than what I'm hearing is it is different than what I'm used to here. Like, so I want to make sure
Absolutely.
that everybody understands that it is, like you say, it's not a regression. Lifetimes show up. How do you get people to see their lifetimes? Not everybody sees or knows or feels like what's going on.
Well, everybody has that dormant faculty, right? And
Okay.
there are people who really struggle to trust themselves. And when that is the case, then I usually give them some Bach flowers to help them first, really learn to trust themselves a little bit deeper so that when we do the session, they're not like, because as soon as somebody is saying, oh, I'm just making this up, then it stops the process. We can't go further because they're doubting what they're seeing. And so I tell them, well, just keep an open mind. Well, we can correct it later. If it's really wrong, we'll see that. But, just allow it to unfold and you'll see that it makes perfect sense in the end. And that's exactly what happens. It always makes perfect sense in the end. And so, yes, in the past, especially within the twin flame, arena, I've had clients who were like, I can't see anything, and like that weren't able to proceed. What I always do is if that happens, I try for, like 15 to 30 minutes. If it doesn't work, I give them the Bach flowers to take and then reschedule.
Got
And
it.
the people that reschedule will be able to access it the next time.
Okay, that's interesting. It's good to know. Like, I just want to make it practical. I'm
Yeah,
the
yeah,
kind of
sure.
person who wants to, like, I'm the guy, I'm the girl, let's say, show me how to do this. Like, go
Yeah.
get me into this, because I think it's really interesting. And when you touch on the martyrdom, I think that is something that I can really relate to, and I know for many lifetimes. Yeah, I get that, and it's a pattern, and it's so much deeper than what you can imagine. Like you say, you always get somewhere where you never thought you were going to go, which is very interesting. Like, you think but as soon as you start thinking you already lost it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like so interesting. All right, so we're talking for a while already. I want to now get into how is it that people can work with you? Like, what can they expect? Where can they find your stuff? What are you working on? How can you help them? The whole thing.
Okay, great.
Go
So
ahead.
you can find me on sabriyedubrie.com. So if you go there, then the first thing that will be very valuable are the soul teachings. It's a lot of what I've been doing today, explaining how all of this works. I do that on a regular basis in the soul teachings. And so reading them can already like really help you get a deeper understanding of like the whole incarnation process and the whole soul journey and what it means to heal on a soul path level. So that's one. Then I have low entry soulology sessions, which are more like spiritual coaching sessions. We have hybrid soulology sessions, which is a little bit of soul embodiment therapy mixed in with a little bit of soulology. And that really allows us to kind of like pinpoint what is playing out in your life right now based on one traumatic experience from the past. Yeah, so it's much more to just clear up a block that you're encountering now. And then, of course, I have the soul embodiment therapy sessions between 2 to 4 hours, and that we really drill down to the beginning of where a pattern was created so that you can release it once and for all. So those are kind of like the sessions that I have. And then I also have a program. It's called Coming into Oneness, which is a healing program that really helps you to come into this process of a soul embodiment. So that's more for like personal use. And then I have a business program as well, which is soul embodiment therapy certification program, in which I train therapists to become a soul embodiment therapist. And the business program is the soul embodiment therapy certification program. And that also comes with a marketing program, soul embodied marketing program to help, my therapists and people who buy that course to like really put themselves out there and start working on the internet, getting clients. Because of course, that for a lot of therapists and healers and spiritual entrepreneurs, that is one of the biggest problems.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. 100%. Well, if is there one thing that you would like to leave the viewers and listeners with? Like, what is your advice for them, like in a nutshell?
If you've done like a lot of healing on like current life, childhood, ancestral, and things like that, and maybe even a little bit of past life, then definitely go to the soul path, because that really helps you to like release it at the root. This is like at the root of all of our deepest, programming and patterns are our soul path wounds. And so when we address them at that level, you can really release them once and for all.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. I agree with that. So thank you so much, Sabriye, for this very uplifting and different story. And I hope that the people that are watching us, that they are inspired. And if they are bumping into something and they have no idea what it is, then I think they should really explore whatever it is that you are doing. And so for now, I wish everybody a wonderful week. And until next Soul Sister Stories. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. If our journey today resonated with you, please consider subscribing and liking this video to support our growing community. For more insights and resources, be sure to check the links in the description below. They're filled with valuable information and support to guide you on your spiritual path. Remember, your soul's journey is unique and magnificent. Stay connected, keep exploring, and let's continue this journey together in our next episode. Until then, keep listening to the whispers of your soul and embrace the life of your dreams.